Welcome to Braindrop by VCOM Solutions. Each episode, we talk to IT leaders and experts, explore recent projects, and learn from their triumphs and challenges. We hope today's episode provides you with a unique window into the world of IT, where creativity meets problem solving and technology drives businesses forward. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo. Now let's drop into today's conversation. Today on Braindrop by VCOM Solutions, I am joined by Demetrius Dillard, the Senior Director of Technology at Aspire Indiana Health, a nonprofit health system in central Indiana. Demetrius has more than 15 years of healthcare technology and management experience and strives to integrate technology in a purposeful and fiscally responsible way so that healthcare organizations can serve their clients seamlessly while ensuring that their data is secure. Demetrius, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, we're definitely going to talk a lot about IT and tech, but as you know, and as everyone knows, our life is not our job. And so outside of tech and IT, what are things that kind of fill your day or fill your time?
Oh, well, for me, I think one of the things that I've started to regrow a love for is fitness. So I actually go to the gym an ungodly amount, I would say, but I enjoy it. It allows me to relax and kind of blow off some steam in a productive way. But then also I've got kids. I've got a 17-year-old son who's getting ready to graduate from high school. Wow. And I've got a 10-year-old daughter. I know the big gap, but I've got a 10-year-old daughter who is all athlete. So both my kids are athletes. We are a sports home. So my son was a 3-sport athlete. My daughter currently is a 2-sport athlete. She likes basketball, but she really loves soccer, more football as many call it. But she really loves those 2 sports. I'm trying to get her into volleyball just because she is a taller kid. She's probably the tallest kid in her school. And she's only in the 4th grade. Wow. So I'm looking forward to that. She does have her dad's, athleticism with her mom. I'm not going to expand on that, but she is really, that's my daughter, so she's my heart, and my son's my brain. He is absolutely all my emotions. So my kids, sports, and then my wife, my wife Demetrius Dillard. She is another one of those things that I use outside of the world of IT and healthcare in order to keep myself level headed.
Were you? I imagine you were a sports person too, growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. So myself, I'm not really going to consider myself a 3-sport athlete. I was a football player. I was all conference, played football. That was my thing. And then I also did track. So I threw shot put, and discus. I was not any good at discus, but because I was strong and I was a big guy, I would muscle it, literally stand at the front and just throw it as hard as I could. Shot put a little different. I thought in my mind I was really good at shot, but I never really did it.
And is this, you said your son is graduating. Is this going to be a kind of a goodbye sort of thing, or will he be staying close by?
It will. As of right now, he's stuck on his decision to go to Muskegum in Ohio, which is a really good school, really beautiful campus. Dad probably would not have chosen it, but I'm happy he did. He really loved the campus, the facilities. I mean, everything. He loved it. The staff that we met, the history of the campus, he really enjoyed it. So, he's being recruited for track. Nice. So he's going to be a shot put. And they're talking to him about throwing hammer. So he's got some new avenues that he can do when he goes, but yeah, it's going to be one of those goodbyes for now. He'll go there. I think Ohio's a really good state. So yeah. If he chooses to stay there after he graduates, I would not be upset at all, but would love for him to come home to Indiana, because that's where we're at. We want to try and make sure we bring our best and brightest back to Indy. And I consider my son to be one of those.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So has he not thrown hammer before? This is kind of just like a new thing.
Yeah, he is not. So the state of Indiana doesn't sanction with IHSAA some of those other field events. So like hammer and javelin throw, stuff like that. They don't do those here. You really only get shot put and discus, and it depends on the size of the school, to my understanding. But yeah, he's really big on shot. He just came in 3rd at the invitational they did on Saturday, throwing, I believe, 45.5. So he 45-10 is, I think, is what he threw on Saturday, but his goal is to be above 50 by the end of the year.
Wow.
So trying to do push-ups and get him to do everything. He's got to work on his core and all that. So
That's awesome. I always love the first 5 minutes of the podcast is always a little cheat for me to just kind of talk a little bit about something outside the thing we talk about for 40 hours a week every single day. So with that being said, though, how did you personally get started in IT and tech?
yeah, so with me, my background or my foundation on healthcare IT or healthcare technology was rooted in clinical engineering. So working with the hospital equipment, anesthesia machines, lasers, beds, the IV pumps, things like that is kind of where I cut my teeth on. But then ultimately, what from my vision and the vision of my leadership at the time, at Wishart Hospital, which is now called Eskenazi Health, really was how can we optimize the workflows of the clinical staff? Currently, or in that current iteration, none of the beds, like the patient monitors were connected. They were all on a hub, like a spoken hub type of situation. So none of them connected or talked to each other. Each floor was separated. Each unit on each floor was separated. So I approached the leadership with a discussion around updating the network topology for that patient monitoring system at Eskenazi. And so I upgraded the hubs to full blown switches. We wanted to make sure they were all connected. We got the patient central stations updated and connected. So from that, it kind of really, I mean, more so than what I thought, blossomed my love and hunger for the IT world. Really diving into how can we secure it, but again, ultimately making sure the end user's perspective was just so much better. And I know a lot of people from a healthcare clinician perspective in today's world will be very frustrated with the EMR and how tech has kind of caused them to do a lot more in the computer, whereas they would prefer to stay facing the patient. So I agree with that. So from my perspective of the tech and from early on to now, it really has been how can we, make their lives better so that way they can actually spend more time with their patients, which is really what they want to do.
I like that. From the jump, then it was kind of just like, all right, I want to improve the end user experience. And in this case, it's the client. And the way to improve the client's experience is to improve the doctor's experience to be able to interact with the client more directly. And so it's not tech for the sake of tech. It's being able to use tech in a way that enhances that relationship rather than take away from that.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that even today, talking with some of our clinical leadership now, I've been pressed on trying to let them know, hey, we can deploy all the tech in the world, but there still needs to be somebody sitting in front of it. So if we're going to do that, then we have to be thinking about what that customer experience is actually going to be. And I think most customers, myself included, I'm a consumer of healthcare. I'd hope most people are. So we really need to make sure that from our own lenses, that if we're sitting in an exam room or if we're sitting in some type of healthcare setting and we don't get to interact with the people that we know needs to take care of us, that is a bad thing. So I really don't want our staff to be so focused on the technology that they forget that they've got a person in front of them and that they're people themselves.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting conversation because tech and human relationship always are at odds, especially lately. And healthcare is the main place where that comes to light a lot. And so this is a very fascinating conversation. And especially as, like you said, you're also a consumer. So you get to sit there as the patient and then go back to your job and go, okay, what did I not enjoy about that tech experience that took away from my ability to relate to the doctor? It's very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that? I think you said your love for IT came from solving that end user problem. Is that where your love for working in IT and tech really came from? Just how can I solve those problems and improve that experience?
It did. And I'll use an example. So on the med surge floor, I think it was the 5th floor at Wishart Hospital. There's north wing, south wing, and then they've got staff who really need to be able to communicate and get the most up to date information as they can. around the patients that they take care of, because some of them would be graduated into, a more ambulatory department. So that way they wouldn't be bedridden. They could get up and walk around and do what they need to do. So the need that I saw with the clinical staff in order to connect and be able to do what they need to do and not be running back and forth to different floors. Once we got that system updated and upgraded, and then they had the ability to kind of see across that floor from their seat, they didn't have to walk all the way on the other side, i.e. taking time away from them being with the patients themselves. They can share that workload a little bit better. Just being able to interact with that nursing staff and hearing how much better their work lives were, because again, they didn't have to keep doing all the extra wasteful walking back and forth just to give updates. A lot of times they didn't want to use the chat, they didn't want to use email, when they know for a fact they could have just looked at 5 different patients and been able to get an update and then provide an update to the staffing provider or physician. So really, really seeing that help connect the dots for me, because one of the big things for me is always trying to be not just a servant leader, but just being, again, empathetic to what people have to deal with the things that I'm tasked with taking care of. So just making sure that I can do that and getting that mind connection with them to be able to say, you guys are, struggling with the technology. How can I help? And then when we connect, we talk, we made the improvement, and they actually displayed and showed, this improvement actually helped us. We did good by making sure the tech is now no longer a barrier, but it's also, it's now being looked at as a tool or resource.
So does it really require you to almost constantly be in touch with the doctors and the nurses to understand what exactly their needs are in order for you to know what your team needs to do to really improve the technological experience?
Absolutely. And I think from my lens, I am also a quality management professional, not by trade, but by background, through the work that I do with the EMR and the tech in itself, just because you've got to always have the ear or the voice of your customer in everything that you do. So a lot of times I'll round or I'll meet with the clinical staff. I'll meet with the clinical leadership. We do committee meetings where I actually am constantly polling and, asking them what's going on. We do an annual survey where we check with staff, frontline staff, not just leadership, because, there's one thing to be said about getting leadership strategic brain to be able to help drive the bus of where you need to go. But there's also the aspect of the feedback from your frontline staff, because the frontline staff are the ones that are in the weeds. They're in the thick of it every day. So if the frontline staff come to you and say, hey, Demetrius, when it comes to the EMR, you told us that this would be better, but instead of us being able to document something with 2 or 3 clicks, now you're telling us we got to document the same thing with 10 clicks. This did not help us. Now we are spending so much more time focused on the computer versus being able to look and work with our patient. So I really want to hear their voice. I really talk to them when I go out to our clinics. I will have a sidebar conversation with a group of employees and just ask them genuinely, how's things going? Is there anything that I can help with from a tech perspective? It's not always with the EMR. There are some situations where, just here recently, I did a site survey because we're getting ready to put new fiber connections at some of our locations. And I walked in and a group of medical assistants at one of our locations literally say, hey, Demetrius, we've got these telehealth workstations, but we don't have any power adapters for them. Can you get us some power adapters? Something as simple as that, of me asking how they're doing, it actually helped them, even though we gave them power adapters. We'll say that just to get the extra ones for them, help them be able to say, now I don't have to worry about this telehealth workstation shutting down on a patient in the middle of a visit. I don't have to worry about trying to swap this thing out every couple minutes just because this one needs to charge versus that one. So just giving them something like that, just hearing them and addressing their issue, which, mind you, we're able to get them extra chargers the same day instead of waiting, because typically they're so caught up in the hustle and bustle of everyday patient care. Something like that, they would literally forget about it. Even though they know it will make their life better, their work life better, they'll forget about it. They'll just deal with having 2 chargers for 4 workstations. And it's like, you don't have to do that. Let us know and then we'll get you more. So stuff like that, I get that from frontline conversations with employees.
I think that's so interesting because I think almost in my head, in an ideal world, it'll just be like, okay, if you guys have any problems whatsoever, just reach out to us and we'll make that happen from a distance, wherever we are. But like you just said, they have more than enough to focus on, that these things are just, we'll make do with what we have. And so it's almost imperative for you to have to go there and ask and be like, I'm here as a person to person. Let me know what you need so we can solve that problem, because I know that it's not top of mind at the end of the day. Let me email the tech team, the IT team, and tell them everything I need, because at that point they're ready to leave. And so I think as advanced as tech is, it's just incredible to hear that at the end of the day, it's still that human to human interaction that really solves the problems.
Absolutely. And I have that conversation with my employees where, there's a place for the ticketing system. There's a place for, being able to reach out and triage an issue or a request. But then there's also a place to still be human. It's really easy for us to sit, in our office, in our workspaces, and forget that we've got customers that potentially are just, they're bogged down with too much work, and they can't get to what, to be able to put a ticket in. They can't get to be able to send a request. So what we do here at Aspire is we purposely schedule time at our location. So we have our help desk staff actually working from location periodically throughout the month. If anything, it gives them a quiet office space to be able to get other project work done. But it also gives us where we are building relationships with our consumers. We want to make sure that they know that we're here for them. To the point where even if they've got a box full of equipment, sitting in an office that is either spare equipment or is broken equipment, and they just can't find that time, we want them to know that we will be out at some point. So you can not worry about that box of equipment, because we will be out. And then when we get there, it'll jog their memory, that we're there. So really, again, thinking about it from the same lens of, clinicians, where they want to be able to be forward facing, to their consumers, we do as well in the IT world. We want to make sure that they actually can interact with us and not electronically or virtually.
Yeah. It's really, it's awesome, because a lot of, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of IT people I talk to, or a lot of IT in general, is behind the curtain, right? We hide and we just do the things to manage and upkeep the tech. And all you're saying is, no, I have to be there. We have to be there as a team in order for us to know the tech we need to be able to help them. And it's that switch, right? It's not tech first and then people second. It's people first, and the tech will support that. And that mindset is crucial, not just in healthcare, but life in general. And I think adopting that mindset can go a long way for a lot of IT professionals, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think there's something to be said, about that. Because, like our CEO has this power of three. Patients is first, partners is next, but people is third. So that triad of the three P's for us is really focused on the person, the human element of what we do. Now, don't get me wrong, from the standpoint of what we do, we want to always be tech forward. So we want to be able to meet people where they are. And what that means is that we've got to deploy tech to do that, because we can't really allow our staff, we can, but we want to keep our staff safe. We want to keep our staff in a position where they can be, their most authentic selves. They can actually be safe and do what they need to do, work at the top of their licensure. So by doing that, we have an underlying foundation here at Aspire where everybody leans on the tech. We do a lot of things that are tech forward that in the healthcare space is not normal. I will say that as an ambulatory behavioral health focused provider, we also are in a space where we are duty bound by HIPAA to the tune of 42 CFR, because we do a lot of higher level behavioral health care. So we are very highly secure. We're behind a lot of secure firewalls. I will also say we're in what's called zero trust. So we're in a zero trust environment. And I joke with non-tech people by saying we don't even trust ourselves, when it comes to IT, because we don't, from my standpoint as the senior director of information systems and technology, it puts me as one of those higher risk individuals where somebody's trying to gain access to my account. So I really feel that I don't need to have admin access to every system. I absolutely don't need to have admin access to our cloud infrastructure if I'm not managing and maintaining it. So we really take to heart, that work-life balance approach of, you only do what we need you to do. And we take that same approach from a zero trust framework really is, hey, if you don't have anything to do with that work or that access, you don't need it. So we take it away.
Yeah. Well, just because, especially going back to that 3 Ps and we talk about the patients, they're first, their data needs to be secured, locked down, and anybody can be a breach, a risk, right? And so reducing that risk to only the person who needs it when they need it ensures that the data, that my health data doesn't get out to somebody who doesn't need it. And so it's not that you don't, it's not that, oh, we don't trust our people, but in a way it's like, yeah, we don't, because we're people and we need to make sure that the patient's data comes first there. And so it makes sense for sure. HIPAA is, a thing. I think healthcare has, I think IT, I talk about how awesome it is to hear about IT and healthcare, but IT and healthcare is very, very, very tough because you have to uphold and protect a lot of things. How do you kind of keep up with all of the security laws and also the tech that's changing and evolving, especially in that healthcare industry? How do you keep up with all of that?
I'm going to say partners. I'm going to pull the 3 Ps back out. So I am a non-voting member of the Indiana Cybersecurity Committee, or the governor's cybersecurity committee. So I attend that once a month. It is in person. It's not virtual. You can't attend if you're going to be virtual. So they share a lot of best practices information, but I'm also a member of the healthcare subcommittee of that governor's cybersecurity committee. So connecting with partners, connecting with other professionals in the industry, it really benefits you from a security standpoint to have a really good network. There is too much information for one person to digest and maintain. So you really have to have your ear to the ground. You got to have a couple friends who have their ear to the ground. And then you got to sign up for a lot of different news or best practice organizations. So like CISA sends out updates or known exploits. You got to be able to get connected to those. And then also you got to be able to connect with your partners. So we are a Google house. So I'm connected with Google. Google's connected with Mandiant, who is top of the line cybersecurity vendor. So just leaning on partners and friends, just in order to stay up to date. And then also, you got to go out and do some research, be purposeful with being able to schedule time. That's something that I pride myself in and working with my staff to schedule some upskilling time, just schedule that time where you can actually, review a news article, you can review blogs, you can listen to blogs to get updated on information. You can do a lot of things watching and listening to podcast. Those are opportunities where you can get some updated information. And I get it. Some of us have a lot more, or better connections than others. So sometimes listening and reading material, is redundant, but I think that's where you see the value in it because it's a confirmation of that information being really good. And that source being really good. So you really want to make sure you find a couple of them, and stay connected. But again, delegate. You can't do everything on your own. So stay connected with your partners, get their information and get connected with the network.
Yeah. I love that. What are you most excited about when it comes to the future of IT and tech?
For me, I think what I'm most excited about is the further emergence of machine learning and the ability that it grants us with AI. There's a lot coming. I attended a session at National Council last year, and then I attended another session at the Google Next Cloud Summit, where there were vendors, AI vendors, like large tech vendors that really talked about the maturation of artificial intelligence, the ability that a small company like Aspire has to be able to get connected and, taking us from, a roadmap that traditionally is 5 to 7 years to down to where we can do 1 or 2 years of product development and, strategic placement of technology to help us optimize what we're doing. So it really is exciting. So that's one of the things that really excites me. And then also staying along the lines of artificial intelligence and how it connects with our IT or healthcare infrastructure. There's a lot of electronic health record vendors that are really pushing AI. So for me, my challenge is, to them, don't use it as just a marketing pitch. Talk to us from a tech perspective and a clinical perspective of the value analysis that you have with your AI. What does it really do? So that excites me because I actually can, actually get a chance to challenge them. I actually get a chance to dive in behind the scenes and look at what their AI engine is. Is it Microsoft? Is it Google? Is it Chat GPT? What are you doing with your AI that's aimed at improving the life of our clinicians and our staff that have to engage with these systems? Because it's one thing to just say, here's AI. AI can do a lot of stuff. You ask it a question and it'll expand upon that question. But what else can it do to help improve our lives? Because there's a lot being asked of us from regulatory and government bodies. I mean, that really puts a strain on our staff when we have to spin up full departments in order to monitor and maintain the data that's required for a government program. So it really is, can the AI help offload that burden by being able to kind of produce it by us feeding it the rules, and then it start to give us the analytics outside of it. And then we just need to digest the analytics. Those are things that really excite me that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. And then of course, on the flip side, then with everything that excites you, are there things that kind of keep you up at night?
Yes. So cybersecurity wise, I have periodic alarms set on my phone. Now I'll say this, we do have managed security, managed endpoint and detection and response. We've got all that. It's got AI baked into it. But the one thing that keeps me up at night is I'm a realist. So if we have those tools and resources, the bad actors have those tools and resources. The bad actors having access to Chat GPT or Bard or even Watson, it scares me. So it's a matter of, are we deploying enough tools and resources to combat them in this ongoing chess match that we're doing with them? Because I'm constantly harping with my employees, excuse me, I'm constantly harping with my employees and my leadership about their ability to be cyber heroes. I want them to be vigilant in what they do. I want them to, look first, react second. Don't click that link, because you click that link, you may give some AI solution that the bad actor is using access to our system. And then it's our AI against theirs. Who's the strongest? Who's been trained the most? Who has the best machine learning behind it? So that stuff kind of keeps me up at night and throughout the day. And it's funny because I'll be sitting in a meeting and my 12:30 alarm will go on. And I know it startles people, but what it does is it I've kind of trained myself to say, when that alarm goes off, I need to check my pockets of information. I need to check my SIM to make sure if there's any alerts in there, that our managed service partners working on. I need to check my know before training calendar to see if someone has clicked on something, that they shouldn't have, and I might need to reach out to them. I need to check my email security, dashboard to see if, our trend of, attackers are coming. I need to check my EHR dashboard to see, so really it's me checking my pockets of information. So that way I'll stay up to date. But I've probably got about 10 different alarms throughout the day.
Wow.
That keep me on my toes. So for me, it is that bad actor.
And it's a real fear.
Yes.
Yes. It's a very, very scary fear. So props, not even props, but you almost have to do that, right? To make sure that everything is secure and safe. I think that's a very fascinating thing, because it's crucial and it's necessary. We've talked a lot already about your kind of IT team and what you guys have been doing, and I introduced you a little bit, but do you kind of want to explain that a little bit more too? Kind of what your IT team is, how long you've been there, and then what makes up your team?
Sure. So I've been at Aspire here for 3 years now. I'm hoping to make it longer. So been here for 3 years. I have our help desk that reports to me. I've got our network enterprise team that reports to me that I've got security under with them as well. And then I've got our database administration team, and then our clinical applications team. So those teams are kind of what make up the core of our information systems and technology department. It is a growing team. We're sitting just under 20 employees right now. But we are looking to grow as the company looks for strategic places to kind of grow as we kind of move forward with our new leadership. Anthony Sheehan, he is kind of revamping who we are as a company. He is a brand ambassador. He does a lot for the company behind the scenes and out front. So looking forward to his leadership to help grow our organization and the IT team. He, as well as the other executives on our C-suite, are really in tune with our tech forward, approach. They really look at us as leaders to be able to let them know and not find out things, from outside sources. I will say, and I'm going to give a shout out here to my boss, Jim Skeel, who's our chief information officer. He does a lot. He is an encyclopedia for Aspire as well as the state of Indiana when it comes to CCBHCs, and that's Certified Community Behavioral Health Center. So he does a lot. He's an advocate for us, as people. He does a lot for us. Our patients as well. And I'm also going to say I'm in a bit of a unique situation. I consider it to be unique. Not knowing everybody else's situation, but our CFO, Tim Crockett, is really in tune with the cybersecurity world.
Oh.
So whenever there's something new, he is also one of those connections that I have that will send me an article of something and say, hey, Demetrius, did you see this? What are we doing to combat this? And then I can give him, hey, Tim, this is what we're doing. Or glad you brought this up because we weren't thinking about that. So really having those specific leaders has been a game changer, for us. I think when I came on at Aspire, I will say there was 4, 5, 6. I want to say there were 9 employees, but we got as high as 19. And then we kind of had to diverge from a couple people. We lost some positions because they were grant positions. But we are looking to grow that back over the next 2 to 3 years. We're looking to add somewhere around 8 to 10 more employees and specifically building out our security department. And that's, again, based on a strategic aim and growth of the organization. But also when we look at the external factors, of what's happening in the world from a political perspective, the wars and everything are, having those bad actors or nation state cyber attacks, and we're seeing those. So, and you look here recently with the Change Healthcare breach, something that we're all dealing with. If you're a healthcare company in the United States and abroad, you're probably impacted by that Change Healthcare breach in some way, shape, or form. So we're looking at that, but that actually puts us in a position where the growth of our team has supported us when we need to respond to situations like that.
I will say you are in a unique situation because I've not talked to a lot of people where they go, yeah, our IT and our finance are locked in. Usually there's kind of that separation where you need to try to convince them of certain things, of certain projects that you want to do. But it's really cool that he's also really proactive and kind of looking in that space. So I think that's really awesome. And again, we've talked a lot already about kind of what goes on in your day-to-day, but is there anything else in your day-to-day? What does your day-to-day typically look like as the senior director of IT?
So that is a good question. So day-to-day for me, there's a lot of, strategic, connections and business development, in my day-to-day. Here again at Aspire, everyone is really tech forward. So I've got things that come across my desk all the time. Hey, Demetrius, what about this software to help us improve, service access? Hey, Demetrius, what about this software to help us with processing, our payment, system for accounts payable? So a lot of that really is, a part of my day to day, but then also, I consider myself to be a de facto counselor when it comes to some people when they're struggling with tech. There are opportunities for improvement that come across my table all the time. So just talking through those with the employees and the leadership here at Aspire. We've got a customer advisory committee where it's made up of our patients. Our patients make up that committee. So oftentimes, and I've offered to them once a quarter to just come in and talk to them. I have to be able to address them as well, because again, they're our patients. They're what we're here for. So that's a part of my day to day where I'm constantly thinking about ways that I can communicate with them, and communicate with our employees so they can communicate to them, what changes are coming with our company, how we're addressing issues. There is actually one of our patients, that is really in tune with the cybersecurity landscape as well as artificial intelligence. So this patient will send questions. Hey, what's Aspire doing with AI? I can't tell you everything that we're doing with AI because again, zero trust. I appreciate you asking that, but I can't tell you everything we're doing. But, here's some of the things that I can tell you what we're doing. And I provide that feedback to them. Like just this morning, I had a conversation with one of our other senior directors around how can we address an internal issue with a department that is not documenting within our EHR. But that reason of them not documenting within our EHR is because the external partners that they're connecting with in order to help create wraparound services for our patients, that external partner is not in an EHR. So how can we work with that department, the external department, or the external partner and our existing systems to achieve the most efficient workflow as possible? So I have conversations with our senior leadership to work on those items. So I oftentimes will present back to them, what is your existing workflow? Let's look at it from a quality improvement perspective. What's the existing workflow? If you've got an existing workflow documented, let's see if we can take a Kaizen approach. Let's do a PDSA. Let's see if we can do, that plan, do, study, act to be able to say, this is where we are. This is where we want to go. And how do we get there? Because I think one of the challenges that we have in healthcare is that everybody's workflow is the best, the most efficient workflow. Well, I challenge most people in my day to day to think about that. Are you thinking beyond what you see on a day to day? Do you potentially have an opportunity to get feedback from those that you partner with or those that you serve to be able to say, was this process, fruitful for you as well as myself? Hey, can we do this better? To be able to say, let's take a look at our own internal workflows and see how we can connect better with our other partners. And I'll say there's some other partners that we work with, like, the state agencies, DCS, we work with them. So we have conversations with them. The state Department of Mental Health, we work with them. And I'm also the chair of our state data analytics committee through our state advocacy organization called Indiana Council. I work with them and we have conversations all the time to be able to say, how can we serve not just each agency better, but how can we serve the state agencies better? Because they need the support and the information that we produce as well. And we don't want to make their lives harder just to process information from 24 or 25 different community mental health centers. So we are constantly in that collaborative approach to be able to say, hey, how are you guys doing this? Is this way the best way? This may be the best way for your region, but it's not the best way for this region, but it is a way. So really kind of working with people from that quality management or quality improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love this because even if your way is the best way, that doesn't mean it can't be better, right? And so it's never about, and I love that you bring it back to that Kaizen approach. It's never about where you're at in comparison to another. It's about, well, sometimes it is, but it's also about, well, how can you be better than you were yesterday? Because it's about not being complacent, especially in the healthcare industry where you can't be complacent because, you have some of those vulnerable data in the world sitting right there. And so I really love that sort of thought process. Well, I have two more questions for you. This was awesome because to all the listeners, we have a very set list of questions, and we just naturally jumped into a really fascinating conversation that barely touched any of the actual questions, and I just think it was awesome. So this is me advocating for this episode. It's like, please listen to this one because I think this is incredible. But two more questions for you. One, if you could have anything you wanted to help you do your job better, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. If I could have anything I wanted to do my job better. Jokingly, I would say another me, but I can't say that because I actually have probably 4 or 5 other me's on my team. So I think for me, anything that would help me do my job better, I think would be, it's a hard question. It's hard. And I'll say it's hard because I think the team that I've got, leadership as well as those that report to me either directly or indirectly, are really good. So it's hard to find something that'll help you do your job better when you're in that place or that position. But I will say, I think one thing that would help me do my job better, would be, I was almost there too.
Then you're like, oh wait, no, I think maybe that's already good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, it's really in a good place. I think one thing that probably would though, it is, and I'll say this from a healthcare IT lens, is less government regulation, or modernized government regulation. Because one thing that I see in our healthcare iteration, which I'm going to brag on the state of Indiana here for a second, we do really well when it comes to health information exchange. And that's with all the guardrails, the 42 CFR data is stripped out, so we don't share that unless it's already approved and it's tied to a clinical diagnosis and the patient knows where we're sending and what we're sending. So it's already kind of ironed out, what those guardrails are. But I think the state of Indiana, through Indiana Health Information Exchange, or IHI, has created a framework that should be a model for the rest of the states in our union, which is really being able to share information and not be at fear that you're violating HIPAA, you're violating some type of, state attorney general law. There's a lot of data protection already in place, but from a healthcare perspective, it really makes things hard for us to be able to provide top level care with partners. So when we talk about, if I'm having a conversation, with a hospital to be able to refer a patient, but I have to go out and, secure, the patient's approval, even though they're already in the arm of care of a care team, to be able to say, I need to refer you out for neurology, but I can't send any information to them, or they can't receive it because there is some fragmented, government law or regulation that's causing us not to be able to kind of pull things back and share that information with the receiving provider freely. I think that is a hindrance to integrative and top level care. I think that's probably one thing that if I can remove those government regulations, I think that would make our lives easier. Cause like right now we've got where we're trying to share information because of CCBHC. We need to create a clear path for patients that are in crisis, to be able to get to the services that they need. And it oftentimes means that those patients are needing, more acute care than what Aspire can provide, more acute care than what any of the other CMHCs in the state can provide. So we need our hospital partners. We need to be able to get connected with them and get our patients right their door and have them be prepared before we get there. But it causes barriers when we can't do that with all these other, red tape items. So I think that's something that I would look at. And then from a technology perspective, I think and I'm going to diverge from that a little bit, because from a tech perspective, I think one thing that I would like to see, again, the government get out of is a lot of the regulation that they're putting around tech. I think those of us that are in tech know it. We know what we should deal with. We know what we shouldn't deal with. And I'll use the freeware as an opportunity. Here, we know as tech professionals, not all freeware is created equal. So we know what we should and shouldn't deal with. So it causes barriers when we have to, deal with our government trying to regulate AI and machine learning and everything, where, most vendors have a value proposition with it. So they're not going to let it overextend anyway. So it's like they're creating and putting extra layers there where I don't think it's necessary. So
yeah, it's like what you do for your nurses and doctors. You go there to figure out what the problems are to help solve it. You almost feel like the government should do that rather than placing these rules that they think work. Go to the people who are actually doing it every single day and ask them, oh, how can we work together to figure out the best way to actually govern this? Because there does need to be some protection. So I like what you said about not removing necessarily, but modernizing, right? Like actually up to date with what needs to be protected and what doesn't. And the final question is, what are some of the greatest things you've learned in your career that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah. So one of the main greatest things that I've learned throughout my career is that you're not always right just because you have a set of credentials or just because your lived experience is different than someone else's. And I say that because a lot of times I'm faced with clinicians, our technical folks do the same thing, where I'm faced with clinicians who feel like, oh, well, you're not a nurse. Oh, you're not a physician. And then also I've got on the same token, I've got tech people who always say, oh, well, you're not a network engineer. Oh, you're not a software developer. Well, people's lived experiences give them a unique perspective. They give them the opportunity to be able to speak to something that you're working on or something that you need. So I always try and tell people, don't demean or devalue somebody's word or their opportunity to give you constructive feedback. That will take you a lot further. As a servant leader, you've got to be able to have an empathetic ear. So if you have the opportunity to be able to say, hey, I'm genuinely interested in what your thoughts are on this product, service, or person, you can learn a lot. You can move forward a lot further if you have that empathetic heart and ear, because sometimes people will get caught up in, hey, I really can put myself in your shoes. Well, of that experience, what are you actually, or are you truly processing the opportunity to learn? So I always tell people, have an open ear, empathetic ear, so that way they can learn forward. Because a lot of times we can get stagnant, as professionals. We can always try and put our own lived experiences above someone else's. And I had a conversation here recently, where a nurse kind of was shocked at the opportunity of how I build my EHR teams. And I say build them, but I'm going to say grow. I tend to work with the brightest of the brightest from the clinical team to be able to say, hey, are you interested in a career in IT? Because they have a lived experience that I can help train them from an IT perspective to be able to put the ones and zeros in the right order. I can train them to build a form. I can coach them on how to do a workflow analysis. And I can do the same thing on the opposite end of the spectrum. I've actually had, IT folks who are really technical, and I can say, hey, I can train you on how to communicate with the clinical staff. I can train you how to do that workflow analysis. I can train you on that change acceleration process. So really kind of trying to coach people and tell people, don't devalue someone else's lived experience, because you may be really good at one thing, but be a student and you can learn to do something else, which will grow the breadth of value for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a perfect way to end it. Well, Darnell will be joining us but I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. This was it's the first healthcare IT person I've been able to talk to. And so I grew up, I was actually in pre-med. And so being able to hear this from your perspective is fascinating. So I just want to say thank you for your time and best of luck with everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite.
VCOM Solutions is here to help make your IT projects and day-to-day operations as easy and efficient as possible. If you'd like to see how VCOM can help your organization save time and money, request a demo at vcomsolutions.com/demo. Do you work in IT? Be a guest on Braindrop. Go to vcomsolutions.com/Braindrop guest to sign up. Thanks again for dropping in. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can find us on social media at VCOM Solutions. Until next time.